All right, lesson 7.3, part 2. So, just a couple problems we got to look at here. This is multiplying, but it really is not a whole lot different than what we were doing in the previous lesson. So, it's still just factoring, looking to take out common factors. When two fractions are being connected through multiplication, it basically just creates one big fraction. So it's really the same idea as the previous lesson, just bigger, because now you have two fractions instead of one. Anything on top can cancel out with anything on bottom. So once you've factored, again, I'm just looking to cut out common factors. So I'm going to sort of put the factors above each one here. So anytime I see those three terms, looking for products of -3 that would add to be -2. So we're going to do those as x minus 3, x plus 1. On the right side, again, products of this guy that would add to be this guy. Looks like 7 and 9 would work. So let's do x minus 9 and x plus 7. And on bottom, this is where we have our difference of two squares. So remember on that one, we are looking to take the square root of each term. Make one a plus and one a minus. So if I took the square root of my first term, square root of x squared would just be x. And the square root of 1 would just be 1. So those are my factors on him. Again, down here, numbers that multiply to be -21, that would add to be 4, would be 7 and 3. So let's do x plus 7 and x minus 3. And so now everything's been factored, just looking to reduce our common factors. So you can see I have an x plus 7 on top, I have an x plus 7 on bottom. Those guys can go. I have an x minus 3 and an x minus 3. Those guys can go. I got an x plus 1 and an x plus 1. Those guys can go. All I am left with is an x minus 9 on top and an x minus 1 on bottom. And that's it. That's as simple as it can get. Remember, you are not allowed to cancel out those x's right here because these are connected with a plus or a minus sign. The only time, the only time things that can be canceled is when they're connected by a multiplication sign. So if you look at these guys right here, technically this is x minus 9 times x plus 7. So these two terms are being multiplied together, which is what allows me to cancel those out. Right? So it's kind of an all or nothing. So I can either take the whole factor or none of it, because I can't just do part of a factor like this. Right? So that's as simple as that one would get. Moving on to number 10 here. We're going to keep this fairly short because when you see division, all you're ever going to do is turn it into a multiplication problem. Remember in the past when you were taught to, anytime you were asked to divide by a fraction, the rule was multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to simply change this to multiplication, and I'm going to flip my second fraction. And it's always your second fraction that you flip. So in this case, we'll just rewrite the whole thing here. So I'm going to change this to multiplication. And these guys are going to flip. So my x squared plus x minus 72 goes to the top. My x squared plus 8x minus 9 goes to the bottom. So this no longer exists. So again, that's what you're going to do every time you see a division sign. You simply multiply by the reciprocal instead, and it becomes exactly like the last problem that we just did. So this would be a great place to pause our video here and give this one a shot before I do it. But I'm just going to start factoring. So numbers that multiply to be -15, that add to be 2, would be our +5, -3. Over here, numbers that multiply to be -72, that would add to be 1, would be +9, -8. And just going on down to the bottom, going to do all the same stuff. So breaking that one into x plus 9 and x minus 1. this guy. Looks like we got a -8 and a +5. All right. So now we're looking to cancel anything on top, can cancel with anything on bottom. Remember, when these guys are connected by multiplication, it becomes one big giant fraction. So anything on top with anything on bottom. The one thing you can't do is if I had two of the same factor on top or two of the same factor on bottom, you cannot cancel those out. It's got to be one item on top with one item on bottom. Right? So like I can do this guy with this guy. We can do the x plus 9s. I can do the x minus 8, and that's it. So looks like we are left with an x minus 3 on top, and I'm left with an x minus 1 on bottom, and that's our answer. So one last thing I want to show you, because this tends to confuse people a little when they first see it. So let me write this out real quick. I'm just going to write my own problem here. So if I were to be asked to multiply that by x squared minus 9, so don't forget that if it's not written as a fraction, you can always put it over 1 to make it a fraction, right? And now it's a little more clear as to what's on top and what's on bottom. And so once you've done that, now I can start canceling, now I can start factoring and then canceling things out, right? So I'll just knock this one out real quick. So on top, I have my difference of two squares. So that would become, I'm going to put it over here, x plus 2 and x minus 2. I got another difference of squares right here. So that would be x plus 3 and x minus 3. On bottom, all I have really is the x plus 3. All right. So at this point, this is where I would say, okay, let's cancel out those x plus 3s, and then those three factors would be my answer. That's what's left over. So again, keep anything that's on top, must stay on top in your answer. If there's anything on bottom, it's got to stay on bottom in your answer.